Imagine a city on the brink of collapse, its lifeblood choked off, its people trapped. This isn't a scene from a post-apocalyptic movie. This was the reality for São Paulo, Brazil, in 1924, during a forgotten conflict known as the Tenant Revolt. So, what happened? A group of young, idealistic military officers, the tenentes, were fed up. They saw Brazil's government as corrupt and stagnant, controlled by wealthy coffee and milk oligarchs in a system nicknamed Café com Leite, coffee with milk. These officers believed the country needed a radical change, a modernizing jolt to escape the grip of the old guard. And they decided São Paulo, the nation's economic heart, was the place to make their stand. On the night of July 4th, under the cover of darkness, the rebellion began. The tenentes, led by figures like General Isidoro Dias Lopes, swiftly seized key locations across the city: train stations, telegraph offices, and government buildings. Their initial movements were precise and effective. By morning, the city of over 500,000 people woke up to find itself under the control of revolutionaries. The state governor fled, and the rebels declared their own rule. At first, many citizens were confused, but some were cautiously optimistic. The tenentes promised reform, a new era of honesty and progress. They tried to keep the city running, ensuring essential services continued. But the federal government in Rio de Janeiro wasn't about to let Brazil's most important city just slip away. President Artur Bernardes was a hardliner, and he responded with overwhelming force. This is where the story takes a dark turn. The federal government didn't just send troops to surround the city. They unleashed a brutal, indiscriminate aerial and artillery bombardment. For 3 long weeks, São Paulo was under siege. Shells rained down on working-class neighborhoods, factories, and residential areas. The government planes, nicknamed Vermelhinhos or Little Red Ones, dropped bombs with little regard for civilian life. The goal wasn't just to defeat the rebels. It was to terrorize the population into submission. Imagine the chaos. Buildings crumbled, fires raged, and the streets became a war zone. Water and food supplies were cut off. People huddled in their homes, listening to the terrifying whistle of falling bombs. The city that was a symbol of progress and industry was being torn apart from the inside and bombarded from the outside. Hospitals were overwhelmed with casualties. Thousands of civilians were killed or injured, caught in the crossfire of a battle they had no part in starting. The rebels fought back fiercely. They dug trenches in the city streets, turning São Paulo into a landscape reminiscent of the Western Front in World War I. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but their conviction was strong. They held on for 23 grueling days, but they couldn't hold out forever. The relentless shelling, the lack of supplies, and the mounting civilian casualties made their position untenable. Faced with the complete destruction of the city and the slaughter of its people, the tenentes made a difficult decision. On July 28th, under the cover of night, they executed a strategic retreat. They slipped out of the city and began an incredible journey that would become the stuff of legend, the Long March of the Coluna Prestes. They marched thousands of miles through the Brazilian interior, continuing their fight against the government for years to come. But they left behind a devastated São Paulo. The city was scarred, its infrastructure shattered, and its people traumatized. The official death toll was over 500, with thousands more wounded and tens of thousands left homeless. The 1924 Tenant Revolt was one of the largest urban conflicts in Brazilian history, yet today, it's often just a footnote. Why does this forgotten war matter? It was a major turning point. The brutality of the government's response exposed the deep cracks in Brazil's first republic. The ideas of the tenentes calling for things like a secret ballot, public education, and social reforms didn't die. They planted the seeds for future change. Just 6 years later, in 1930, many of these same ideals would fuel the revolution that finally brought down the old oligarchy and brought Getúlio Vargas to power, ushering in a completely new era for Brazil. The near fall of São Paulo is a stark reminder of how quickly a society can be pushed to the edge. It's a story of idealism clashing with brutal power, of a city held hostage, and of a rebellion that, despite its military failure, ultimately helped reshape a nation. It shows us that sometimes, the battles lost on the streets can still win the war for a country's future. Thank you for watching. If you found this piece of hidden history interesting, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories you probably didn't learn in school. See you next time.